you need to frame the proposal in the benefit to the customer. And that was something that, as an engineer starting out, having no sales experience of any kind, that was a kind of a foreign concept. It was like, well, we're really good at these certain things and these technologies, and this is like a really cool idea, and they would not accept it. But I didn't communicate the huge win part for them. And so reframing and having executive summaries and kind of building everything to support the benefit to the customer was a real game changer.
Welcome back to Neuroconvergent Leadership, where we talk about effective communication and leadership, especially in the STEM workplaces. Today we have a guest, Harley Green. Harley, welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
I am fantastic. How about yourself?
Doing very well today. Thanks, Jeremy.
Perfect. So, Harley, can you give everyone a little bit of a background of where you started your career and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I worked as a computer engineer in the defense industry for about 15 years between El Segundo, California, and Chantilly, Virginia. Worked on like high-speed compute performance projects, signal processing, things like that. Worked from large defense corporations all the way to small boutique defense contractors. So kind of saw the gambit there, all the way from being an intern up to being a senior software architect running my own programs. In 2022, I walked away from being a computer engineer to focus more on real estate investing and being an entrepreneur running a virtual staffing business. So now I travel the world full-time with my family as digital nomads, running a couple of different businesses in the real estate space and virtual staffing space.
Great. So where are you located now?
We are in Cardiff, Wales. We're spending the summer here in the UK, and then we'll be going off to Portugal and Spain.
Cool. How do you choose where you're going?
That's a great question. The world is kind of our oyster, so to speak. Like, we really can go anywhere we want. Sometimes it just happens where there's like a world school hub happening. So we have 3 children that we homeschool, and there are these things called world school hubs where other people kind of coordinate more formal activities. And so we're going to be going to one of those in Spain. And so that kind of caught our attention. Other times it's just, hey, the kids said they wanted to like go to Japan. So we spent 3 months in Japan earlier this year. Really just, sometimes it's just flight deals. Like, hey, when we were leaving Japan, we kind of knew we wanted to start working our way towards the UK. And we saw this really amazing flight deal that was able to take us from Tokyo to Sri Lanka on the way to the United Kingdom without adding any cost to the flight. So we ended up spending a week in Sri Lanka.
Cool. So this isn't really on the topic, but it's interesting when you give someone something totally open, like write a paper about what? Anything you want. It is so mind-numbing that people can't do it, and they need some sort of framework, like write a paper about medieval history. Oh, okay, that frames it in, and it makes the decision a lot easier. It's interesting that you kind of have no parameters, and you kind of have to make them up to figure out where you're going to go next.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'd say like the biggest challenge with this lifestyle is the planning and logistics. We spend a lot of time figuring out where we're going to go, figuring out the transport, the housing, because we work still. I mean, we work online. We don't work that much, but we still want to have places where we can work and then have space for the kids to do their homeschool. So, and excellent Wi-Fi, desks, and Airbnbs can sometimes be difficult to find. So it is a big challenge.
Nice. Fun one, though. It's good.
Absolutely.
So tell me more about when you started out. You said you started as an intern. Tell me a little bit about your progression, and at what point did you go from being an individual contributor to being a manager and or a leader?
Absolutely. So yeah, my first job was my freshman summer in university. I went to the University of Southern California. I got a job as an intern at the Aerospace Corporation in El Segundo. And I ended up working there after I graduated from USC. They had a great program for kind of transition people from being interns to full-time hires. And they also had great benefits for higher education reimbursement. So I was there. I got my master's degree in computer security and computer science. They also had offices in Virginia. And so one of the things that was great was they actually moved my family from Southern California out to Virginia because we were interested in living somewhere that had a lower cost of living while still maintaining our engineering salary from California. So it was a huge win to be able to move out to Virginia for us financially. When we were in Virginia, that's where we started kind of developing my career more. I had finished my master's degree, started taking over leadership on some projects, and started having people that I was working with. It was not until the next company I worked for, that was a small boutique contractor in the same line of business, where I became more of like in a leadership role, where I actually would submit proposals, If they got accepted by the government, then I would be the project manager for that and responsible for the execution of that program, and would have teams of maybe up to 5 different engineers, maybe some interns thrown in there, working under me on those projects.
That's interesting because there are two different things in that transition. Proposals mean that you're essentially selling to someone, which takes a lot of understanding of what's in it for them before, instead of just saying, here's what we're really good at. And then leading a team is another entirely new set of skills. So what helped you kind of make that leap, and how did you do it? And or what were the struggles that you just really had to slog through?
It was a struggle. It was one of those things where at this contractor that I was working for is small. I was employee number, I think 13 or 15, very early on. And so there was a lot of flexibility in what you did in your role. And so the nice thing was they really encouraged going after a new project. So if you had an idea that you were passionate about, they would come alongside you and say, all right, here's the different kind of funding opportunities that you might want to look for. They'd help you identify what you could go after. And then the leadership team would guide you in writing that proposal. Now, the work was on you to actually come up with the idea, the content. They would review it and give you feedback, of course, but then, it was really up to you. And it took a lot of practice. Like there were many iterations of writing proposals that didn't get accepted, and we would get feedback and from the government or the customer at the time, and I'd take that to account and be like, okay, here's the things I need to consider the next time. And also getting feedback from the leadership team, as well as what was really helpful was going to other more senior engineers that had been doing this longer that weren't necessarily on the leadership team, and just talking to them and seeing the ones who were like pulling in proposal after proposal, getting them accepted and running a lot of programs. And they were actually getting, some of them were to the point where they had to like basically say, well, I won the proposal, but I have no capacity to even run this thing. So here, you can kind of run it. And that was helpful too, because then you kind of got experience running a program and seeing where it came from with some guidance of a more senior level engineer.
Were there any things that on your, say, 10th proposal that if you looked back on your first proposal, you would have obviously known to change?
Well, you mentioned it earlier in the previous question, and you nailed it there. Is like you need to frame the proposal and the benefit to the customer. And that was something that, as an engineer starting out, having no sales experience of any kind, that was a kind of a foreign concept. It's like, well, we're really good at these certain things and these technologies, and this is like a really cool idea, and they would not accept it. And it was just kind of like, why would they not accept it? It's like this technology is innovative, it's cost effective, like it would be a huge win for them. But I didn't communicate the huge win part for them. And so reframing and having like, executive summaries and kind of building everything to support the benefit to the customer was a real game changer. And after that, it's kind of opened the floodgates, and proposal after proposal started coming in because we were communicating the benefit to the customer, and then everything else was supporting that benefit.
Love it. And then at the same time, you were starting to lead teams of people as a project manager. Did you apply those same lessons to your management, or were they different lessons?
I will say that my time as an engineer and management was challenging. There was really, unfortunately, at a small company like that, not a lot of guidance on how to be a manager. There was not like encouragement, like at the previous company, to go, do continuing education, having education reimbursement as much. And so a lot of things how we ran things there, looking back now, I'm like, oh, that could really be improved. And it's not been until being out on my own as my own business owner and seeing these challenges and being like, okay, well, I need to fix it or this business isn't going to work, that I've really learned these things. And so I'd say, kind of looking back, one of the things that was just like a continual problem and challenge that we faced was meetings. Having regular project meetings, whether it's like the monthly all hands for the company or weekly project check-in meetings with the team. I didn't know anything about like structuring a meeting well. I kind of just observed coming up as an intern and then entry level software engineer how everybody else was running their meetings. Unfortunately, most of them had the same kind of upbringing, that system of like, well, this is how they were doing it, so this is how I'm going to do it. And they were like really informal, no strong agenda. People talked way more than they should, and there was a lot more people in the room than there probably needed to be. And so since then, like I've really adopted kind of the EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System style for meetings. And I wish I could go back and like tell myself, 10 years ago, you might want to take a look at this book or read how to do these meetings, because it just makes it so much more efficient, not only for the meeting time, but you also get a lot more insight and the what's going on just like on a personal level with your team members. Because one of the things that it does is it opens up the meeting with having people go around and share a personal win and a professional win.
Hmm.
And so that opportunity to, when people are not just talking about the project and not just kind of blabbering on about like, well, I updated the code, I pushed an update, I fixed this bug. They are able to share like kind of things they're passionate about from both a professional and a personal side. You get so much more insight into what's going on with a person and are much better able to relate to them when there does have future conflict or challenges arise with that person.
I love that. Most meetings that you go to that are not structured start with chit chat, and people feel like it's a way to get connected, but it feels like a waste of time to me. But if you can kind of structure the chit chat, and it's not chit chat, it's pretty important, but it may not necessarily be work related. But if you're sharing a personal win in a structured way, that is a great way to build connection before diving into what needs to be accomplished.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And then, going from there, having people be trained on what is expected of them in the meeting is really huge. A lot of times we would come and it's just like, okay, everyone give your status update. Well, I may be working on like 5 different aspects of a given project, especially in a smaller company where like people wear so many different hats. Does everybody in that room need to hear about the full status on all those 5 different things? No. And so, if you can be, as a project manager or team leader, train your team members on what's expected. Like, hey guys, here's the things that we care about in this meeting. Here's like, what are the top 2 challenges you're facing? What are the top 2 things that you successfully like addressed or resolved over the last week? And you focus on those. And then if there are other things that come up that are the challenges that need to be discussed later, we're going to note them and we're going to save them for the end if there's any open time at the end, not just like monopolize. Because there could be times where like one person would have this like random issue with what they're working on, and everybody feels the need to chime in and give their solution. And it's like the whole meeting now, an hour has passed, and only one person has given a status report.
It sounds to me like there are actually 3 parts in that. One is training people on what to contribute in general in a meeting. Part of it is setting a very specific agenda so that people know these are the few things that you need to deliver on. And then some of it is effectively running the meeting and not allowing the runaway trains to happen. Did you focus on all 3 of those, and did you find that any was more important than the others?
I think that they have equal importance, because if you let any one of those things go, the meeting's going to go off the rails. And so having a clear agenda, like it can just be one PowerPoint slide or chart that you have up that's just like, guys, here's the things we're talking about today. And it especially helps too if you can put the time limits on there so people know like, okay, here's, and it could be relative times, so you don't have to update it every day. It's just like, from 0 to 15 minutes, that's that sharing time of the personal and the professional win. From 15 to 30, we go around and you do those 2 updates. And then the last 15 minutes is addressing any of the challenges that came up during the previous section. And then we're gone. And so everyone kind of has their eye on the prize. They're paddling in the same direction. They know what they're supposed to be doing.
That sounds like it's for a meeting that happens over and over. If you were to have a meeting on a specific thing that wasn't the standard meeting, would you send out the agenda ahead of time? If so, how far? And if not, why not?
If you have the time to make the agenda and send it out in advance, I would say like do your best to do that. Obviously, there are some critical issues that come up, and that's something else that I have learned kind of the hard way is when there are conflicts or there's challenges and you need to have a meeting. A lot of times, especially in the STEM world and engineering, people would just try to resolve things via email or chat. Get in the Slack system blows up or your chat system, whatever you're using, and people kind of get inflamed, like egos get involved, versus if you just say, hey, can you just like hop on a quick Zoom call or just pick up the phone, give them a call. I have some questions. And you approach these challenges with a sense of like genuine curiosity. Don't bring your ego into it. Just like, this person I trust is a smart person. They were hired to be on this team for a reason, and they've made a decision. They must have some reason for it. I want to really understand what's the reason for it, and how can we like be collaborative to come to a resolution on that. And being able to like just have that quick phone call or like a video call like this can resolve things so much faster. And then you may not have the need for having such a structured meeting with the agenda and timing.
I love that. Every time you say something, it brings up three more points in my head, so I'm trying to keep track of what they all are. I was coaching a client once, and we were on the time management portion just to try and get things under control for him. And at one point, he said, I apologize. I kind of screwed up because we were having an issue, and I just walked over to the guy, and it was in a different building, and I'd spent like half an hour. We had a conversation. I'm like, that's great. He said, yeah, but it would have been so much faster to send an email. I'm like, would it have gotten resolved? He's like, probably not. I'm like, you saved time by you invested the time to talk in person rather than send an email. That would have just been a throwaway.
That's exactly right.
Let's see, what was the other point of that? Oh, the genuine curiosity. That's something that I talk about all the time, actually wanting to know why the person is saying what they're saying. Do you have any more insight into how that can be accomplished? Because I'll tell people you have to be genuinely curious, and they're like, how? Like, it seems so self-evident that I'm not sure how to answer the question. I'm very interested in your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me as like a computer engineer, I love being very direct, and that's not really the correct or most efficient approach when it comes to resolving conflict, sometimes just depending on the other person's personality. And so I've found having the curiosity demonstrated through open-ended questions like, tell me about, this decision you made, or can you explain, not explain, I think when you say that, like, can you explain, it can almost be like accusatory. You can just say like, tell me about your thought process on this. Show me how this works. Or do you think this is the best way to do this? Are there any other ways to do this? So just leaving the things open-ended, trying to, like, as much as possible, keep your personal agenda that you came into the meeting with kind of at bay, and just gather that information. And the great thing about doing it that way is if you actually are in a situation where like your idea maybe is better, or like you have the solution, your questions and having them being open-ended like that and having that curiosity will kind of disarm the person that might be a little stressed and feeling like, they're coming under attack for their decisions. And they will open up and start talking through their solutions and be like, well, now that you ask and mention that, maybe we could do it this way. And the way they land on could be exactly what you wanted anyway. But, that's an amazing idea. Let's go ahead and do that. And it's been resolved. And they feel like they've like solved the problem, and you've gotten what you wanted, and everybody's happy.
Again, two things that I want to address. One part of that curiosity, I think, is the willingness when you're asking a question to accept that they may have an answer that's better than what you think. Like when you ask, basically knowing that you're going to end up correcting them, you're not being genuinely curious, and it's going to show at some point. So, yeah, I love that. Yeah. So the other saying that I really love is, you can accomplish anything you want as long as you don't care who gets the credit. But a lot of times people feel the need to say, I'm going to tell you how to do this, rather than letting them just take credit, even if you were the one who got it in there.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes from like the culture in a company. And if you can, as a team leader, maybe it's not coming from higher up in your company, but if you can start setting that culture for you and your team, it might take hold and improve things in your workplace overall.
So on that topic, making a hard turn, how do you go about building culture in your companies?
Well, it starts with being very clear on your mission, vision, and values. And so if you don't have those, it's hard to have a culture because you don't really have a framework to base your decisions on. And the great thing about having clear values in your business is that decision making becomes easier as well. And so one of the things that I've been really big on is trying to delegate as much of the business operations as I can to other trusted people, so that I can have this lifestyle where I spend most of my time just enjoying exploring the world with my family. But to do that, I have to have really clear values and mission in my company, so that my team members that I'm delegating to have the same mindset and can make the same decisions that I would in a situation. And so that is like the first big challenge is, get super clear on your mission and values, because those will help direct your team in making decisions in the same way that you would.
I love that. There's an analogy that I can't quite remember, but it has to do with a ladder being against a wall. And you can be the best at climbing a ladder, but if the ladder is against the wrong wall, then what's the point of it? So,
It all
yeah,
falls down. Yeah.
knowing where you're going to go is so important. How long ago did you make the transition from leaving the corporate world to owning your own businesses?
So we had little side businesses, even like right after college, we started like a customizable book business. So we've had that entrepreneurial gene kind of ticking for a while, but it really took off, I would say, in like 2022 is when I stepped away from being a full-time computer engineer to just run my own businesses exclusively.
And have you had a business where you've gotten outside funding, or have they all been funded by yourself?
They've all been directly owned by my wife and myself and funded by ourselves.
Got it. And you work with your wife.
I do. That again is something where there are times where there's kind of personality conflicts, or we have different skill sets and different ideas on how to run things. I know some people have a really hard time running businesses with their spouse. It's been a huge blessing for us, and with challenges. One of the things that's nice is that like our family and professional lives are kind of all intertwined in a good way. Like, we are able to do things that maybe others wouldn't be able to do as like business expenses, because we are legitimately doing business during those times. And so that is a big plus. And then on the other side is we've got different personalities, we have different interests. And so we have found having really clear roles in our businesses helps a lot. So we stay in our lane, we define our roles, and doing like even making a job description for yourself as a business owner is super helpful, because it can just say like, all right, maybe you got a partner or you've got a few co-founders with you, make those job descriptions and you can write it yourself and say like, here's what I want to do in this business. Here's kind of like my ideal role, and just write it down. And then everyone can like review those and look at them. And that just makes it so much more clear. So if a challenge comes up or something needs to be addressed, like, is that in my purview or is that in my business partner's purview? And then you just let them handle it. You don't, even if you've got an idea of how to fix it, just let them handle it unless they come to you and ask for help.
I love that. A lot of people don't feel the need to build any sort of organizational chart because there are only, say, 3 people in the company. I'm like, no, it's actually almost more important than to really define everything that each person is responsible for, even if you're not the one who does it. If you're responsible for it, someone else may be the one who actually does the thing, but it's important to know all of those lines.
Absolutely. That org chart with like 2 or 3 people can look really funny, where it's like, okay, you're the CEO, you're the chief marketing person, you're in charge of investor relations, all these things. And the other person has like this, 5 different hats as well. But that's how you get started, and being clear just makes it so much easier. And then when it is time to start, you got that revenue coming in, you start delegating, you hire more employees. It's so much easier than, say, just carve off those pieces. Like, okay, I'm cutting this part of my job description, pasting it in and expanding it into a new job description, moving that responsibility off of my hat and giving that hat to someone else.
Out of curiosity, how often are you hiring a new person to take that over, or are you outsourcing?
So we've tried to set up our businesses to be 100% virtual. So all of our employees are all virtual. They live overseas. We've found amazing success working with people in the Philippines because they are very pro-American. They speak English as a primary spoken language there. They're highly educated. And so we're able to get college-educated professionals to handle almost every role in our business. And it's a great way to just, help people. We're able to give them life-changing salaries that just like make huge impacts on their lives and still be very cost-effective for our businesses.
And then what kind of process do you have for training them on the culture of your company and what their specific responsibilities are?
Yeah, so we have a very rigorous onboarding process. Typically takes people a week. We've worked out over trial and error over several years, and so it's things like learning our mission, vision, and values. It's making sure they can follow procedures very clearly and know how to make procedures. So we give them templates and examples. We have things like training on using AI as a thought partner versus just using AI to make social media captions or write emails. The things that we care about as just like general kind of soft skills, we've turned those into kind of little training modules that they go through during that week with actual measurable outcomes. So they need to be able to like have some kind of action item they take at the end of it that our existing team members can score and then measure. And so if they don't hit a certain threshold, we know they're not a good fit, and we can exit early. So it's, we're going to take that time to hire slowly, but if there's a problem, we fire fast so that it doesn't fester and create bigger issues down the road.
It's so interesting because I think when most people take on virtual assistants compared to when they hire someone, when they hire, they expect to spend time and money training the people to get them up to speed. But I think they expect with a virtual assistant, they're just going to be able to drop someone in and have them be productive. But you're saying that person also needs training and onboarding.
These are people we're dealing with. It's the same as whether you hire someone as your next door neighbor or they're living in a different country. They're going to come with their experiences and their skills. But the way you do things in your business is probably pretty unique, and people need to be trained on it. One thing that we have seen actually fail a lot is people who have that expectation that they're just going to get a VA that says they know X, Y, or Z tool, drop in, and all of a sudden they're going to be the expert. Well, they might know that tool really well from a past job, but the way that job was using that tool could be totally different than how you want to use it or how you use it. And so there's just this then mismatch of expectations. And so another tool that we are very big on using with our hires is a 30, 60, 90 evaluation and onboarding plan. So that gives what we're able to do then is take all the different things that we want this new hire to do, throw in AI, say, hey, I want you to categorize these and group them together by similar categories of responsibility, and then make a progressively growing 30, 60, 90 day responsibility and evaluation criteria for handing them off. So this helps because your new hire gets very clear on what their expectations are at each 30, 60, 90 day cutoff. And it helps you as the leader or business owner say, okay, here's what I need to focus on, getting them ready and trained to do. Because that's another challenge is people are like, I'm doing everything. I got all the hats. Where do I even begin to start handing things off? And so if you can just make a list of all things you'd like to hand off to someone and make that 30, 60, 90 day plan, it becomes so much easier on you as well.
Is this something you help other companies to do?
So yes, our virtual staffing business, Workergenics, helps other companies get what we call ultimate executive assistants, because they have gone through this really specialized training program that we have for virtual assistants, so they can operate at a much higher level, at a level that U.S. business owners expect from executive assistants, but oftentimes don't even know how to get them there. And so we both train the VAs, and we also support and come alongside those executives and leadership teams to help them get these things in place if they don't already, by providing the frameworks, the SOP templates, and technology tools to help them be efficient with task management portals and things like that.
I have to imagine there are a lot of people who would be interested in that. Can you tell the audience where they can learn more about it and about you?
Absolutely. I've got a free guide at workergenics.com/neuroconversant leadership. If people go there, they can get the free guide that has over 100 different roles and responsibilities that our clients have successfully delegated to their ultimate executive assistants, just to kind of help get the wheels turning. And if anything on that list kind of resonates with you guys, you can have a free discovery call with me. I'd love to just learn more about their business and see if it's a good fit and how best to support them.
That's wonderful. I am going to take you up on that. So
Awesome.
You're at least going to have one.
Very good.
All right. Harley, this has been fantastic. Before I let you go, is there any one piece of communication advice you think everybody can benefit from?
If I was to pick just one thing, I think it would be the value of having regular face-to-face meetings. It can be virtual, but just having that face communication. So many times I've seen issues break down because the communication only happens via text medium, whether it's chat, email, and they can be resolved so quickly, like we mentioned in this call, by just having that face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, and just to add to that, text is absolutely the worst because there's not even grammar. And
yes.
And email is also challenging. The thing I would add on is if you start a conversation on those and it just doesn't feel like it's going right, stop. If you start having a problem over text, you are not going to solve the problem over text. So it's great to start with an in-person conversation, but if you started somewhere else, stop it as soon as it starts going wrong. Harley, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and insights.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Neuroconversant Leadership. We're over 100 episodes now. And as mentioned, I'm going to be making some changes. So I would love your feedback on what changes I should make, what things I should add, what things I should take away. Please do me a favor and reach out either on LinkedIn or on my email address, which is jdoran@neuroconversantleadership.com. I look forward to hearing your suggestions. Thanks a lot. Until next time, have a great week.